power differential. You have a star quarterback who is physically and financially powerful versus single moms who work for themselves, mostly from home. One of the parties is famous, known internationally. The other is unknown, marginalized, and easy to criticize and minimize.
So that theme of power is a through line in almost all of the lawsuits. We see several instances where Watson allegedly threatened some of the women's careers, and several of the women said that they felt as though they had no choice but to continue with the massage sessions since they were afraid of what Watson could do. Yeah, so he made a statement via Twitter after the first allegation was made public. He denied the allegation and wrote, quote, "I have never treated any woman with anything other than the utmost respect." After the allegations continued to emerge, however, he hired Houston attorney Rusty Hardin, who has represented other professional athletes before, such as Roger Clemens. Hardin has declined to be interviewed, but he says the allegations are meritless. Just yesterday, he released an affidavit submitted by Watson's marketing manager. In the document, the manager claimed that one of the women accusing Watson of sexual assault tried to blackmail him for $30,000 in January.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful March the 24th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, everybody's warming up down here, Charlton, looking forward to Easter coming soon, and everybody's been hiding their chickens underneath their house, I think, because I haven't seen many of them clucking around here.
Yeah.
But once again, I want to say thanks to our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders, Charlton. They're not hiding from any incident that goes on.
They're not hiding at all. I thought people love bunny rabbit, not chicken for Easter, but it's all fair love and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California. Cadillac, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C. Everybody's doing the pause. They're all doing the Big C pause, but I will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping the veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Charlton, suicide has become a desperate issue in America these days. I mean, so many people are dealing with mental stress, physical stress, financial stress. I know we talk about our veterans every day, and we lose over 24 of them to suicide because of all of those things that occurred, Charlton. But our society is suffering also, and unfortunately, so many people are dealing with these mental pressures. We just saw the shooting in Boulder, Colorado, Charlton. It took so many innocent lives once again in America. We've become the country of let's kill people, and people have become insensitive to it. And I think that's what drives a lot of people to not pay attention to what's going on with our veterans. Is everybody saying, well, we have our own problems also.
Right.
Well, you got those problems because the veterans allowed you to have the ability to have the freedom in this country. And so we need to find a way to keep those veterans free from committing suicide in this country beyond just the suicide prevention hotline number that we give on our show daily, Charlton.
Yeah, and I love giving it out. We'll do the best we can, but everybody has to reach out and touch somebody's hand. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And you can definitely get our veterans and their loved ones some help really happy that we can do our part. Also, if you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, helping put people back to work just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV, and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. I really appreciate that. Also, very happy to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. There's so much going on in our country. I think people just gotta know where they are, Big C. You gotta know your surroundings. You gotta know your environment. I know there's a lot of stuff going on. Easter's coming up, and people are trying to pretend like COVID doesn't exist anymore. I still see people not walking around with a mask on, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's become a personal choice in America not to protect others, Charlton, and people are just very selfish and fatigued.
Yeah, selfish and fatigued. It doesn't make any sense, but it's all fair and level. Where I just want to briefly touch on, I listen to a lot of lawyers talk all the time. In fact, we have lawyers in our mortgage company, and everything we do, we run it by a lawyer. So they make sure everything's right. And I know there's a lot of talk about what's going on down in Texas with the star quarterback, and then women coming forward saying that something happened to them. It's just so inconspicuously unreasonable that 16 people would come forward all in about maybe a week or two window, when some of these allegations go back years, and people can say, well, people were afraid to come forward. But at one point in time, if somebody slaps you, you slap them back. You don't wait 16 months to slap somebody back. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, nobody has gone to law enforcement, so I reserve judgment because I don't know anything beyond that.
Yeah, well, I would like to say this to young men and young women. When you're in an environment, as my lawyers always tell me, get things in writing. And when you get things in writing, you should also get it where you have it authenticated. It's called a notary. You can do things to protect yourself because anyone can accuse you of anything. If you're ever going to be in this situation, and I've got many massagers in my lifetime, Big C, where they're playing sports and out of sports in this real estate business, and even for women that do open houses, we have law enforcement that come to our real estate company, and they will tell men and women, never do an open house by yourself, never allow a customer into a property where you're there by yourself, because you don't know what that person may do. At the same time, you have something in your phone called a recorder. If you can't videotape things, you can record every conversation when you're alone with a person, and that comes from law enforcement and lawyers. It's easier to stay out of trouble than to get in trouble and try to get out, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, this is one of those situations where people are waiting on the information to come out, and up until that point, I'll hold judgment.
Yeah, it's all fair to hold judgment, but if it ever happens to you, you don't get time to hold judgment. Law enforcement moves in, and you got to hope you have a lawyer to help you out. It's all fair in love and war, and things, as my partner says, in real estate, the dirt will come out in the wash. It's all fair in love and war. I want to touch on the world of African-American history, Big C. We've all been inspired by the endeavors of less celebrated African-American athletes. Every pro sports team, Jackie Robinson, oftentimes mainstream says the only guy that ever dealt with any type of shenanigans was Jackie Robinson, Big C. I'm going back to April 18th, 1950. Just like my lawyer says, you want to have a date of when things happen because the dirt will come out in the wash. Sam Jethro, Big C, after going through the sham tryout of the Boston Red Sox of all teams with the great Jackie Robinson and Marvin Williams, Big C, it was 1945, rather than becoming the first major league team to integrate baseball, Big C, the Boston Red Sox of all teams You know, they have Black Lives Matter on the turnpike near Fenway Park now. They ended up being the last. It was 1959, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, this is a city that said time wasn't right. We've heard that throughout history as black people, Charlton. The time is not right. Everybody's not ready for it. You know, when will the time ever be right for black people to get equality in America, Charlton?
Yeah, it like my lawyer says, you got to put it in writing. Don't beg anybody, just put it in writing and let the judge do his part. Jethro recalled that the Red Sox said we had all had the potential, but it wasn't the right time. Like, it's never the right time. You know, even Teddy Pendergrass sang about the right time when he would say, turn off the lights and light a candle. If the woman didn't turn off the light, he said, turn them off. He had to speak a little bit louder, Big C, and I guess Jethro went the same thing. It was 1950. The great Sam Jethro, Big C, debuted for the Boston Braves at that time, the team's first African-American player. Sam Jethro was the National League Rookie of the Year in 1950, playing for the Boston Braves at that time before they moved out to Atlanta. The first African-American to play Major League Baseball in the beautiful city of Boston, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, Charlton, one of the common things that we've seen amongst all these early pioneers of black players going into the National League, Charlton, that when they entered the league, they automatically became Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
That they were just that dominant, Charlton, amongst all the white players that were playing the game. And this was one of the major reasons why they were kept out of the major league.
Yeah.
White owners and managers, they all knew of the dominance of these black athletes, that they had superior talent. And they would show up the white players once they let them in the league.
And sometimes that was frowned upon, Big C. It was 5 years earlier he tried out with the Boston Red Sox at the great Fenway Park. Same Fenway Park that people see right now with the Green Monster, Big C. There was a real monster, and it wasn't called the Green Monster. It was the way people were treated. That was the real monster of Fenway Park, Big C. But along with the great Jackie Robinson and Marvin Williams, but the Red Sox pursued none of them, Big C. Robinson went on to break the Major League Baseball color barrier and won Rookie of the Year in 1947. But think about this. Jethro had a lot of speed on the base path. It earned him the name called the Jet. They call him Jethro, and also the Jet, later shortened to the Jet, Big C. Many considered him the fastest man in the history of baseball at that time, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we've always, looked at the speed of the game, and that's one of the things that's always been prevalent. You know, how fast can players get from home plate to first base once the ball is laid down? How much ground can they cover in the outfield?
Yep.
Do they have the vernacular to steal bases, Charlton? And Jethro possessed all of that.
He did all of that, Big C. During his spring training, when you think about it, 1949, Jethro was clocked in the 60-yard sprint at 5.9 seconds, 0.2 of a second faster than the world's record at that time. Now most people are timing the 40-yard dash, Big C. But Jethro was quite a hit with the fans from the start. Once they saw him run, Jethro, run! He kind of ran like a jet, Big C. Once they saw Jethro run, Big C, they were even more convinced. It's amazing. They were more convinced by watching him run than they were by giving him equal opportunity under the law, Big C.
Well, the amazing thing that African-American athletes were able to do, Charlton, was outdo their competitors. When it came to one-on-one ability, Charlton, African-Americans always dominated. And when Jethro came into the major leagues, Charlton, at that time, he set a record for stolen bases. In his second year with the Boston Braves, Charlton, he stole 89 bases. He broke the record by 20 bases when he set that record, Charlton. And so all the fans were fascinated by seeing him get on base. They knew that they had an opportunity to see something spectacular.
Yeah, watch that man run, but don't give him equal opportunities when he's not running around the bases. So the Braves front office, they knew they had acquired a good outfielder, Big C, but they never guessed that that the Boston fans would adopt him as their favorite National League player. And you think about the excitement that he created every time he reached base. It's amazing. He got excited. He generated excitement for reaching base and running, but not when he was outside of the baseball stadium at Fenway Park. 1948, that was the year that he first played in the minor leagues. But also 1948 was not truly Jethro's first year of professional baseball, Big C. That came a full decade earlier when Jethro the Jet played for the Indianapolis Clowns in the Negro American League, Big C. Your thoughts?
And one of his teammates, Charlton, during that era was the great Satchel Paige, the Negro pitcher of that era, one of the greatest pitchers of all time. But it showed the great ability of these young African-American athletes, Charlton. Think about over that decade that Jethro had to labor in the Negro Leagues and not get an opportunity to play in Major League Baseball. How much he would have dominated it. And they talked about the sham tryout with he and Jackie Robinson and another player at Fenway Park. And they still didn't allow these players into the National League, Charlton, even though they went out there and tattooed that three monsters at Fenway Park. But they said, well, now is not the time. Black athletes have heard that too many times, Charlton. Black politicians, black people have heard that too many times. And ironically, in 2021, we're still hearing now is not the time.
I remember when my mother, she was a baseball coach for a Little League. I made All-Stars. My brothers made All-Stars, and we had a coach that couldn't make it for whatever reason, so he asked my mother, who was always there at our games, if she could coach the Little League baseball team for a couple of games. And a lot of people wanted to pull their kids off the team, and we won the league championship that year. And she said, if you want to quit, we can win without you. And a lot of those kids and parents that wanted to quit, they were begging, could they get back on the team? And she told them, no, you can't get back on the team. We don't want quitters on our team. And I think about the great Jethro. A lot of times people have heard, no, now's not the time. Can this person really succeed? And people love you when you're running around the bases. But sometimes when you're not running around the bases, then they tell you, we really have no need for you. Now's not the time. It's all fair in love and war, Big C. I want to go into some NFL. When you think about now's not the time, maybe it is the time for some people, and maybe it's not the time for everybody. But the NFL draft is one of the most notable events in American sports. Through the 1920 NFL draft, 85 players, Big C, have been selected first overall, with the most recent being the great Joe Burrow from LSU, Big C, the Indianapolis Colts, formerly the Baltimore Colts. You know, they moved out of town. Did they announce a moving sale, or did they just go in the middle of the night when they moved? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you sneak out in the middle of the night, Charlton, during a snowstorm, and that way nobody can track you down the road.
If a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, doesn't make a sound, it makes a sound. It's all fair level war. But when you think about what the Colts did, Big C, formerly the Baltimore Colts, people just may not even think about that. Indianapolis did not exist as a Colts franchise until they left out of town of Baltimore, but they've made the most overall selections in the history. They've had 7, Big C. I think they're the only team ever in history to leave through the middle of the night, too. But think about this for this great franchise. Of the first overall draft picks, 43, Big C, have been selected to the Pro Bowl, and 12 have been inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. While the Heisman Trophy is awarded annually to the most outstanding player in the United States college football, only 21 of those Heisman Trophy winners have been selected first round overall in the NFL draft. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, when you win the Heisman Trophy, I mean, they look at that, Charlton, and, you know, those players don't always fit a team's need when it comes down to draft. You may already have that quarterback or that running back in your lineup that has won a Heisman Trophy.
That's very true. It's not always how great you were in high school, not always how great you were in college. Sometimes it doesn't carry over when you get to the pros. But when you think about that, those Heisman winners that were selected first overall in the NFL draft, only 6 first overall draft pick players have been selected NFL Rookie of the Year. You have the great Earl Campbell. That was 1978, Big C. The great Billy Sims. And that was 1980. You had the great George Rogers, 1981. Sam Bradford, 2010. The great Cam Newton in 2011. And the great Kyler Murray in 2019. And ironically, Billy Sims, Sam Bradford, and the great Kyler Murray, they all came out of Oklahoma, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, if you look at the theme of how players are drafted, Charlton, you can see there in the 70s and 80s that running backs were very prevalent, going number 1 in the NFL overall. But the running back position has been devalued in the NFL, and it's gone to quarterbacks, where they say you have to have a franchise quarterback. And you can see in the last 3 Heisman Trophy winners that went first overall, it went quarterback, Charlton. So things have changed as far as that goes, and those have become Rookie of the Year. But it's so difficult when so much pressure is put upon you as a player. You're the best player on the college level. You come into the NFL, you almost have a target on your forehead when people see you, because you're a big money, high praise guy, and you got to get put in your place.
And I think Earl Campbell out of Texas, as well as Billy Sands, maybe the more dynamic runners, but only Cam Newton out of that list has made the Super Bowl, even though they lost Super Bowl 50 in beautiful San Francisco, California. So just because you're drafted and just because you're named the Rookie of the Year or the Heisman Trophy winner, it doesn't mean you're going to have success when it comes to the world of the NFL. But I do appreciate what those great men have all done in the world of NFL football. Big C, speaking of NFL, and none of those players were able to win an NFL championship, even though the great Cam Newton, former NFL MVP, and started Super Bowl 50, but they were on the short end of the stick to the Denver Broncos at the time. I want to bring it to a quarterback, modern day quarterback, Big C. His name is Joe Flacco. He's agreed to a contract with the Philadelphia Eagles, and his agency announced that, Big C. And Flacco's receiving this again. This is a former Super Bowl winning quarterback when the lights went out down in New Orleans against the San Francisco 49ers and the great Colin Kaepernick. Flacco's receiving a one-year deal worth $3.5 million guaranteed and the opportunity to earn $4 million more through incentives. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's a great deal for Flacco. There's twice as much money as he signed with the New York Jets last year, Charlton, and he's still going to get an opportunity to play in the NFL. Some old guys just won't go away.
Some old guys. You know, we talked about the great George Blanda, Big C, that was playing until he was 43 years old, and he didn't want to go away either. He made sure that he got everything out of the NFL affiliation, especially getting access to the medicine cabinet. The great George Blanda did that. A good old boy out of Kentucky, so he played, and maybe the great Joe Flacco was looking up what happened with the great George Blanda, and maybe, just maybe, he can have the same type of success longevity-wise. It's all fair in love and war. But I wish those great players nothing but the best, and I really wish Joe Flacco the chance to come on to an NFL stadium and have more success winning football games. I want to bounce the ball over to the NBA. NBA basketball is fantastic. Big C, with the Toronto Raptors being willing to send the great Kyle Lowry to the Philadelphia 76ers in a trade package involving the Cleveland Cavaliers and Andre Drummond, Big C. Think about this. If the 76ers get the great Kyle Lowry, who has an NBA championship with Toronto when they got the chance to win that series over the Golden State Warriors, Toronto Raptors get Andre Drummond, Tyrese Maxey, 2021 first-round pick from Philadelphia, unprotected 2023 first-round pick from Philadelphia, a lottery protected becomes 2 second-round picks if not conveyed. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, teams right now are making that final push for the playoffs. The Philadelphia 76ers have been up and down with Embiid in and out of the lineup, and they need another stable shooting force from the outside if they're going to compete against the Nets.
Yeah, and that deadline is coming up, I believe, tomorrow about 3 o'clock East Coast time, if my number's right on my clock, Big C. Now, Cleveland, the Cavaliers get Danny Green. He's also had his teeth cut, Big C, with several different franchises. Big C, I think he had most of his success down in San Antonio. You also think of Mike Scott, Terrence Ferguson, 2024 second-round pick from Miami via Philadelphia. Cleveland's not going anywhere when it comes to playoffs, but Philadelphia is, and I think Philadelphia makes a lot more sense to keep looking before the deadline's over. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Danny Green has championship pedigree. He's won titles with 2 different teams, but Cleveland is just moving assets, Charlton. It's a team that's building for the future. They know they're going nowhere this year. You know, they're one of the more torrid teams in the NFL when it comes about trying to win a game. So, yeah. I mean, this move would benefit Kyle Lowry. He has spent over a decade in Toronto, Charlton. He's the most beloved player in that franchise history. But for him to have another opportunity to be on another championship contender would be great in the latter part of his career.
Yeah, it's amazing. It would be great if he could do that. We know that the great Kyle Lowry was doing his thing, Big C, and when they were up in Toronto, even though a lot of people thought the claw was the reason that they won their championships. It's all fair and level war. I know teams will move around and do whatever they got to do. And speaking of not keeping a good man down, and people say, oh, no, it's too soon. We need more time, Big C. NBA basketball, Houston Rockets, they really do help the conversation that James Harden should be the MVP. I know this season's not over. People talked about Joel Embiid, the great LeBron James. But those two guys are on the sideline right now. They've been leaking a little bit of oil, if that makes sense. They have too much money to have a car that leaks oil, Big C, but their bodies are leaking oil. It's all fair in love and war. Think about this. I've heard a lot of people say at the end of James Harden's tenure, And I know you and I have going back and forth. You were climbing on Harden's thought for the MVP, even when he was down in Houston before the trade. And I was leaning more toward LeBron James because of the championship appearances and the championships. But when I do think about the case made for Harden, I'm kind of seeing things the way you've been looking at it. You think about his tenure in Houston, it disqualifies him from being NBA MVP. Some foolish people say that. I disagree. I'd argue the way the Rockets have played without him actually helps his case. Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, it has. I mean, this is a team that went on a 20-game losing streak when James Harden left. This was a organization that's in total disarray. And it showed how much of a leader that James Harden had been there throughout his tenure as a Houston Rocket.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, everybody has their thoughts. Before their win over the Raptors, Houston had lost 20 straight games, Big C. They were the only franchise in the league not to miss the playoffs when he was there. They didn't miss the playoffs, regardless of what other pieces were around him, Big C. They've had a lot. Capella, I thought when they got rid of Capella, they would not make the playoffs. They made it. When they got rid of Chris Paul, thought the same thing. He and Westbrook were still the guiding light, but we could see that Harden was actually the MVP of that team, even though Westbrook got MVP a couple of times. So they talked about him being H-Town's best, or maybe second best at one time. And think about how they critique him now. You contrast what he did now, known as the Beard over in Brooklyn. The Nets are 23-7 with Harden in the lineup, Big C. And that record isn't just a result of him having superstar teammates because Durant's been leaking oil and Kyrie Irving, sometimes he's been leaking oil, Big C. Brooklyn's won 16 of his last 18, all but one of those wins coming without the great Kevin Durant, and a few being without Kyrie Irving, and half of them being on the road, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is how you speak for James Harden being the MVP of the league. Other teams will say, well, they got players out, and this is the reason why they're losing. You got two players out with the New Jersey, Brooklyn Nets, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant hasn't played since last year, I believe. I don't even know if he's still on the roster. Kyrie Irving plays every now and then.
Yeah.
And he's going to miss the next couple of games. He missed the game last night. But one common denominator is James Harden. He has walked into this organization, Charlton, took all those young players that were on that roster and said, hey, guys, follow me. And they have.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the leader of the Nets, that's James Harden. It's not Kevin Durant. It's not Kyrie Irving. They have flashpoints. But when you look at James Harden, it's like turning on the light switch and the room gets bright. He's always consistent.
Yeah. Is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Herald Club this morning? No, he's the man who wrecked the buffet down in Houston by leaving, and he's a man who reloaded the buffet in Brooklyn because he took his act to Brooklyn, Big C. Somehow Harden's presence once felt like a luxury, become a necessity. He's turned into the most important player of the big three. And then there's what he's been doing statistically. He's averaging 25 points, 8 rebounds, and leading the league 11 assists per game. So people can't say he doesn't pass it. With excellent shooting, think about this, while having a positive impact on the defensive end and playing more minutes than anyone. What I did not respect about Harden when I saw him down in Houston, this is a couple of years ago, they were playing Golden State in the playoff game, but maybe he had a bad back. He just wasn't willing to play defense. Big C, this is a different James Harden coming to town, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's on a bigger stage, Charlton. He's in the Big Apple, and he's doing his thing every night. The thing about James Harden, though, is he's always been consistent. And people have tried to compare him to other players. James Harden compares to James Harden.
Yeah.
When you look at his complete game, where he's sitting there on the verge of averaging a triple-double on the season, he walked up into a lineup that everybody said was stacked.
Yeah.
And yet he pushed that stack to the side and put that one mini pancake on everybody.
Yeah. He was putting the beard all over him, Big Z. They put the beard all over him. It's all fair and level. When he gets into the NBA Hall of Fame, they're going to work in that bust. He might have the best bust with the beard in the NBA Hall of Fame. It's all fair in Levin War. So that's my thought for the great James Harden. And once he got out of Houston, things got a lot better. It's all fair in Levin War. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, I want to ask you about some more big-time players making big-time plays in the NBA. In the words of the late and great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see our apps pop up all over the world. And I really do appreciate that we're heard all over the world. Thanks for the goodness of technology and companies that want to carry the Big C Sports Podcast. Big C NBA basketball. You think about Jokic, 12th triple. Think about this. His 12th triple-double. It leads the Nuggets past the Magic 110-99. Remember, the Magic got over on the Brooklyn Nets a couple of games ago, Big C. Nikola Jokic had 28 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists for his 12th triple-double of the season. The great Denver product, Big C, the Nuggets built a big lead before holding off the Orlando Magic 110-99, and that was done on Tuesday night. The Joker had, think about this, he had led Denver to a 24-point advantage. Early in the second half, that was trimmed to 5 points, but the Nuggets won their 6th consecutive road game to tie a franchise record set twice previously, most recently in 2018. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you can't sleep on Nikola Jokic, Charlton. He's one of the most dominant centers in the NBA. He may not be flashy like Embiid,
no,
but this is a guy that every night you know that you can count on him at the bank. He's going to bring home the money. He's a triple-double, from the pivot position, Charlton.
Yeah.
That allows so much freedom amongst the other teammates to run around and get open spots to get their shot off.
Yeah, when you got a guy at point guard like Jamal Murray, you know you're going to get the ball from Murray. But Jokic is probably just as good a passer. He doesn't have the same skills, but he passes just as well as all fair and level war. Also, NBA thought, Big C, the great Tobias Harris, Big C, hit a go-ahead jumper with 3:44 to play, scored another basket on the next possession, finished with 25 points, 13 rebounds, helping the Sixers hold off the Golden State Warriors 108-98 on Tuesday night here in the Bay Area. But again, Golden State's without the great Steph Curry. I think he's having a little bit of problem with his backside, Big C, if that makes sense to you.
Well, Charlton, players go out to play the game. You got to put the 5 on the court that best suits you for a starting lineup. The opponent really doesn't care who's in and out of the lineup. They're all going out there trying to win a game.
All trying to get a win. You think about the great Ben Simmons, added 22 points, 8 rebounds for the Sixers, who pulled off their 2nd consecutive road win. But again, it was against a team that's a little bit deflated right now. Golden State is playing without the great Steph Curry, and he'll get back in the saddle soon. But Ben Simmons, he's trying to hold down the fort in Philadelphia. This was the guy they wanted to get rid of before the doctor came to town and gave him the medicine he needed. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at these guys playing right now, it's about seeding for the playoffs.
Yeah.
And, players are going to be injured at this time of the year, leg fatigue. This is a very quick turnaround on the NBA season.
Yeah.
But it's about seeding and who has to play the most road games when you get to the playoffs.
Yeah, who has to play the most road games in the playoffs. And thinking of the last time the Phoenix Suns won 7 consecutive road games, Big C, would you believe the great Chris Paul has yet to become an NBA All-Star, the great Devin Booker, Michael Bridges, Big C, and 10. Think about this. They were 10. DeAndre Ayton not even started playing basketball at the time. They were young men. You think about Booker, 23 points. Ayton finished with 17 points, 16 rebounds. The Suns added to Miami's miserable stretch with a 110-100 win over the reigning Eastern Conference champions on a Tuesday night. Think about this. It was Phoenix's 7th straight win on the road. The first time the Suns have had such a streak since January of 2007. They made it even hotter in Miami, Big C. Your thoughts?
Instead of the Suns, you might have to start calling the Comets off the way that they're streaky.
Yeah.
But this is a team that's finding its stride. They've taken over 2nd place in the NBA West, and, they're getting themselves positioned for the playoffs.
Yeah.
The team that's going to have to face them in that first round of the playoffs, Charlton, might not see the second round.
Yeah, might not see the second round. They're a good team. They really are good. You also think about other great NBA players. Julius Randle, Big C, scored. He dropped 37 points, Big C, to spark the New York Knicks to a 131-113 rout of the Washington Wizards on Tuesday night. The All-Star was one of 6 players to finish in double figures New York. It's good to see basketball back in New York, Big C. New York even his record at 22 apiece. R.J. Barrett dropped 21 points. Alec Burks added 20. And the great Michael Robinson, Big C, 16 points and 11 rebounds. This team is starting to remind me of the way they were always playing when they had the great Patrick Ewing and the great John Starks. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this young New York Knicks team, Charlton, is understanding what they need to do. And when you think about Fitz, coaching this team, he's doing a great job. I mean, he's brought all these guys together. And when you think about the youth, and they haven't tasted the NBA that long.
No.
And in this short season, their young legs are running up and down the court, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're going to make the playoffs for the first time in over a decade, which is great for the NBA.
Yep.
Great for the city of New York, that you're going to have two teams in that city in the playoffs in 2021.
You're going to have two teams in the playoffs from that same city. I mean, it's amazing. It's good to see basketball back on the East Coast, especially in New York, Big C. NBA basketball, we talked about the great Harden. May as well crown. You want to crown him? Crown him! The great late Dennis Green, Big C. James Harden, honestly, Artesia High School's finest, won a state championship in California at Artesia High School, Southern California, and then at Arizona State, had Arizona State doing their thing, didn't win a championship, but it wasn't his fault. Now in the NBA, he's been successful when he's been at OKC. He was successful in Houston. Now he's really doing his thing in Brooklyn, Big C. He's had 25 points, 17 assists, as the Nets beat the Blazers 116-112. He went into Dollar Dame territory and said, there's a new sheriff in town, and his name is James Harden. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, James Harden consistently proves, Charlton, whether he's at home or on the road, he's comfortable in any NBA arena. But the consistency that he's playing with, the double-digit points, the double-digit assists, he's always grabbing rebounds, but he's become a great defensive stopper because point guards are not getting the points to equal his output.
Yeah, his output is amazing. Harden had 25 points, 17 assists to lead Brooklyn to the 116-112 victory over the mighty Portland Trail Blazers on a Tuesday night. The great Jeff Green finished with 20 points, 15 in the first half, a pair of free throws to close it out with 4.8 seconds left. Nikolai Claxton had 16 points and 9 rebounds off the bench for Brooklyn. Enes Kanter, 19 points, Big C. He had a Wilt Chamberlain-like 19 rebounds, Big C, and 6 assists. Lillard and his backcourt partner McCollum had a tough night against the Nets. In fact, they were only 10 of 35. In fact, Harden was doing his thing so much, even Dollar Dame and McCollum wanted to watch instead of play defense. Big C sucks.
Well, Charlton, that's the problem when you have a great shooter on the court, is that your opponent will come out there and try to match you shot for shot.
Yeah.
And as hot as James Harden has been, and we know that Dame, Leonard, and McCullough get knocked down threes periodically, but as they were trying to keep pace with Harden, he said, no, not tonight. And he just turned out the lights on.
Yeah, that's the great, what his name is, Matumbo, Big C. He has commercials now running around shaking his fingers at people. It's all fair and love and war. NBA basketball, Ingram, Williamson paced the Pelicans. Ingram, he was formerly with the LA Lakers. They said he was too skinny. He needed to eat more or lift more weights, but it was a 128-111 win over the Lakeshore, Big C, without Davis and also LeBron. But Brandon Ingram looked to invigorate by himself. He was invigorated. And some people say he's just too thin, but some of his old teammates were saying this guy's gotten a lot better since he left LA, the Lakers bench. Zion Williamson resembled the reliable 20-point machine he's become in his second pro season. Amazing when he gets to season 3, Big C. That spelled a lot of trouble for LA. Again, they're without the dominant Big 2, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, like I said, Charlton, it doesn't make any difference who's on the floor. I mean, the Lakers could use that excuse that James is not there, that Davis is not there, but you still got to play the game. I mean, everybody on the roster is an NBA player. The other teams are not going to make that excuse when they got players out of the lineup. Last I checked, the New Jersey Nets, have been without Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And they went into Portland and thrashed the Trailblazers last night.
Yeah, but they got the great beard James Harden in Brooklyn doing his thing. It's all fair and level work. Ingram did score a season-high 36 points. You think he was trying to make a point? Big C. Williamson dropped 27 and 9 rebounds. And the New Orleans Pelicans, they defeated the Lakers 128-111 on Tuesday night. 20-year-old Williamson became the first NBA player younger than 21 to score at least 20 points in 21 straight games. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this guy has been dominant. He's lived up to his advertisement coming into the NBA. saying that he potentially would be one of the next great players in the league, a potential highlight reel.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the Pelicans, they get more games on television than any team that's not in first place, Charlton, because of Zion Williams. And he's been delivering on those performances every night on television.
He has been delivering, and I'm looking forward to seeing him deliver more Big C. I want to touch a little bit on some women's college basketball, and it's amazing how great this tournament is on the men's side, but people call it upsets. I don't know if it's just upsets. They're just teams that are better than they were perceived to be. College basketball, women's basketball has lived up to its advertisement, something that men's brackets cannot say. But again, you can't blame the men's bracket for not living up to all the hype, because the guys, like you say, on the floor and the women on the floor, they decide who win, not somebody that's voting on getting their favorite conference in. It's all fair and level war, Big C. As for the number of, think about this, all four of the number one ranked teams competing in the women's college basketball tournament, they have made it to the Sweet 16. You have Stanford. They are out of the Pac-12, maybe the best team out there. South Carolina out of the SEC. A lot of people down south feel they're the best team. UConn, and the coach Gino Auriemma, he came out of COVID protocol, so that's good for that program out of the Big East. And then North Carolina State out of the ACC. So geographically, it's one West Coast program, and then you got two that come out of the South and one from the Northeast. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you got those three teams, but, I like Don Staley down there at South Carolina. She has been a marvelous coach, Charlton, down there. She's had those Gamecock women playing some outstanding basketball throughout her tenure. She has that national championship under her belt just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Gino Auriemma is back at UConn. And we know the legacy of UConn and the Lady Huskies up there in the Northeast. They've always been a great team.
Yeah.
The Rise team this year has been the North Carolina State Wolfpack ladies basketball team, Charlton. They've delivered on the season, dominating the ACC. And you got Tara Vanderveer out there at Stanford, who has always been one of the perennial women's coaches in the country. She's coached on Olympic basketball teams, Charlton, and also won a national championship there at Stanford.
Yeah, my first college basketball game working with Talent Stats was at Stanford University at the great Hoss Pavilion, Big C's All Fair in Love and War. Actually, it was Maples Pavilion. It's All Fair in Love and War. I really appreciate how successful she was back then, and she's still doing her thing. But I want to take you to a little bit of college basketball thought. National Collegiate Basketball Players Association said Tuesday that NCAA President Mark Emmert, Big C, I don't know if you guys still play golf or not, Big C. Maybe you can't get into some of the clubs that he gets into, Big C. But he informed a group of basketball players who started a social media campaign to protest the inequities in college sports that he will meet them after March Madness. Now, the protesting players, they asked the president, Mark Emmert, why delay the meeting until after March Madness? Tomorrow's not promised for anybody. So thank you for responding to our meeting request, that we are disappointed that you intend to delay this important conversation for at least 2 weeks. In addition, we are disappointed with your apparent attempts to narrow the participation of the meeting to only 3 of us. And I think that's important that players are speaking up for themselves, Big C. In addition, they are disappointed with his apparent attempt to narrow the participation, and to be clear, they're requesting a meeting that will include other men's and women's basketball players, as well as the executive director, Ramoji Huma, who played at Bishop Amat High School in La Puente, California, and also went to UCLA back in the day, so he's well in tune to what's going on in sports. And they want someone present who is an athlete to advocate with expertise in the area. I think that's a smart step in the right direction, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it shows how intelligent that these young men and women are, Charlton, when it comes to college sports, is that they want representation. They want whatever's being said in this meeting to be documented. But they're also calling out NCAA President Mark Emmert, Charlton, for his delaying tactics.
Yeah.
Knowing that these athletes have just cause for this meeting, and to be compensated by the NCAA and the participating universities, Charlton.
Yeah.
But what Emmert is trying to do is trying to downplay this and not have it come out during the NCAA tournament. He doesn't want anything to take off of the spotlight of the Final Four as it's coming up. But these players need to have equality alongside the Final Four.
Yeah.
Their concerns need to be brought out in the media spotlight. Not after the basketball season is over, Charlton, but during the basketball season. because once the basketball season is over, Charlton, we're looking at baseball, the NBA, and NFL full time.
Yeah.
So Emirates is using these delay tactics to benefit himself.
Yeah, and sometimes if you just stretch things out, now's not the time to talk about equality. Now's not the time to talk about, people getting paid. Let's just talk about it later when hopefully people forget about it. It's all fair and love and war. But I do want to touch on the fact that 2021 NCAA women's basketball tournament, and you think about some of the teams that are advanced in the women's. Number 2, Maryland knocked off Alabama. Number 7, Alabama, 100-64. You have number 6, Oregon. They knocked off number 3, Georgia, 57-50. And they're going to play in a football game, I think, in 2022, the kickoff classic down in Georgia. I think you'll see a similar type score with Oregon putting 57 on the Bulldogs in football as well as basketball. Vic, see your thoughts?
Well, wishful thinking, but, a bulldog will eat a duck, whether it's alive or off the grill.
Hey, it might eat a duck, but it won't eat a fighting duck. Big C, that's a different breed of duck. It's all fair level war. Number 5, Missouri State defeated number 13, Rice State by the score of 64-39. Big C, Louisville seeded number 2. They defeated number 7, Northwestern, 62-53. Number 4, Indiana defeated number 12, Belmont, 70-48. I don't like to get into scores that are still on the way with number 7, Iowa versus number 2, Texas A&M. Number 11, BYU versus number 3, Arizona. And number 6, Texas versus number 3, UCLA. Fight. The UCLA men's and women's program are really doing their thing. I want to jump over to the world of college football. I think college football, there's never a wrong time to talk about college and NFL football. I want to get your thoughts on something. I have my own opinion about where the best sports are played. The Pac-12 has more championships than any other conference combined in all sports. But you think about the past quarterbacks and their ranking in the Power 5 based on quarterback development. I want to even go back to the old school before I tell you some of the nouveau riche players, Big C, NFL success in college football. You think about Stanford University on the West Coast. The great Jim Plunkett went on to win a Heisman Trophy and play for the Oakland Raiders, won 2 Super Bowls. The great John Elway played at Stanford under his father, Jack Elway, won the Heisman Trophy and went on to win 2 Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos, both teams in the AFC West. And then you think about at the University of Washington, you had Mark Brunell that went on to win a Rose Bowl under the great Don James, and also had, I guess he was the most successful quarterback so far with the Jacksonville Jaguars, had them rolling, he was starting for them back in the day. And I think the great Warren Moon, as great as any of them, he helped Washington win a Rose Bowl back in the day. The NFL snubbed him because they said, well, now's not the time you don't want to disrupt the old good old boys behavior. He went to Canada, played for the Edmonton Eskimos, won 5 CFL Grey Cups, Big C. And so I think those are the pantheon of success. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you can always go through ancient history, when you're looking at what people accomplished in the past. I mean, every university has that long lineage.
Yeah.
Elway didn't win a Heisman Trophy. But when you look at the current players now, I think that's the benchmark that teams are looking at. Who they can draft to build a program around. That's what the current GMs that are looking for, because a lot of the GMs of today's football era weren't even around when those guys were playing.
Yeah, they weren't around when those guys were playing. And yeah, Elway didn't win the Heisman Trophy, but he was the best player in the country. A lot of people feel that at the time. But I want to go to some of the more contemporary players. You think about Oklahoma, what they've done with their quarterback development in the Power 5, Big C. You think about Oklahoma, they get an A-plus Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 pick, they win out. Think about Clemson. They've had an A-plus. I would give them Tosh Boyd, Deshaun Watson, Big C. You have Trevor Lawrence. Enough said about them. They've been successful, especially under the great Dabo Swinney. North Carolina State with the great Russell Wilson and others that are still in the pros. I look at Oregon. Going back into the past, Oregon's had so many great quarterbacks, but think about the great Marcus Mariota and also Justin Herbert, and he was the NFL's Rookie of the Year. And then you think about Louisville with Teddy Bridgewater and also Superman Lamar Jackson. They also have a nice combo. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, these are universities right now that are churning out quarterbacks. I mean, when you look all the way around. I mean, if you look at Alabama even in that mix, Charlton, because Jalen Hurts gets both Oklahoma and Alabama when it comes to that because of the time he spent with both programs. You got Tua in the NFL. You got A.J. McCarron, who's still in the NFL. And you're going to get Mac Jones, who's going to come out and be most likely a first-round draft pick this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of good players that are doing their thing in the world of college football, and many of them went on to play in the NFL. Very few have won Super Bowls, and when you look at guys coming out of the Pac-12, that's where you find most of your quarterbacks, it seems, that have had the chance to at least win a Super Bowl as well. Big C, I want to touch on...
ironically, when you look at the SEC, they have more Super Bowl winning quarterbacks than any other conference, starting with Bart Starr out of Alabama, won the first 2 Super Bowls. Kenny Stabler, Joe Namath, Charlton, they won Super Bowls. I mean, there's been a plethora of quarterbacks that have come out of the SEC that have had great success. Eli Manning, Peyton Manning. They got 2 Super Bowls apiece between them. The SEC quarterbacks have won more Super Bowls than any other conference in NFL history.
Yeah, they have had some success, but I still say that Pac-12 has had better quarterbacks. When Eli Manning wins a Super Bowl and he's not the best quarterback on the field, they won it with defense. I think Plunkett with the Raiders and Elway with the Broncos, they won it because, and then Troy Aikman out of UCLA, they won it because they actually had better players and they had better quarterback performance. Even if you look at Warren Moon winning 5 Grey Cups in the CFL, they didn't just count on their defense to win games, but everybody has whatever belief that they want to have and who plays the best football. I want to just touch quickly on tonight's NBA schedule, Big C. Big C's thoughts. We have Detroit, Big C. They're at Indiana. Boston's at Milwaukee. I don't know how to say Boston is a hyped game anymore. They seem to fall flat when they run up against big boys lately. I don't know why, but that's the case. Denver is at Toronto, even though that's down in Florida. And then Phoenix has to be careful that they don't fall into that trap when they let you go down to Disney World. Phoenix is at Orlando, and they got, they took the Brooklyn Nets out to Disney World, and they might want to do the same thing to Phoenix tonight. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Orlando got thrashed last night, Charlton, and they'll get thrashed again tonight. I mean, Phoenix is hot. They're the second best team in the NBA West. They're looking forward to a solid seeding in the playoffs.
We'll see what happens, Big C. Charlotte at Houston. Can Houston go on a short winning streak? They do have Charlotte coming in, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this would be the first back-to-back winning session, Charlton, that they've had in some time, if they can pull off a victory tonight.
Dallas at Minnesota, Memphis at OKC, the LA Clippers at San Antonio. Will they bring the same officials they had at home when they had a chance to get over those birds from Atlanta? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they still may be thinking about that, Charlton, and being a little nervous walking out on the court thinking about turnabout and fair play.
Yeah, turnabout and fair play. Atlanta at Sacramento. And then the NBA game of the night, Big C, the Brooklyn Nets at the Utah Jazz, 7 p.m. tip-off up in Salt Lake City, Utah. You have so many people that are interested in this game because it looks like it could, not that it will, but it looks like it could be maybe a preview of someone's version of the NBA Finals. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you're hard-pressed to find teams that are playing better than these 2 teams right now in the NBA, Charlton. Utah has dominated the Western Division all season. James Harden has dominated the East ever since he's come over from a trade.
Yep.
So if these teams continue to playing the way that they're playing, I think the only team that can challenge Utah in the West is Phoenix.
Yeah, it's amazing. I want to see what the Beard does. This is where Donovan Mitchell gets to shine and do his thing. I know some people feel that, he's overrated, not rated high enough, whatever they want to say about the great Donovan Mitchell. I think he's very, very solid as an athlete. We'll see how he holds up to the great shooting James Harden. And to me, it's about Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, and they'll have their supporting cast. Can't wait to see that game. I want to touch on, before we close out, Big C, if Harden goes up to Utah, we know they won when they came to Los Angeles, beat the Lakers. They also won again in Los Angeles to beat the Clippers. They're going up to Portland, and they put out the I guess they turned off the rain, the reigning 3-point champions in Portland with Dollar Dame and McCollum, Big C. If they go into Utah and they lose, is all that, oh my God, maybe they wouldn't have the same record if they played in the West every night, Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, Charlton, if you come out and kick butt on 3 consecutive West Coast teams, Charlton, that means you're just as good in the West as you are in the East.
Yeah.
I mean, Denver's leading the West for a reason because they've dominated everybody in the West.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have some road fatigue eventually at some point. But if they go up there and beat Utah tonight, aren't they the best team in the NBA?
Well, maybe. Give me your feeling on the other side of the coin. You know, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, they have everything's in place. Quinn Snyder, excellent coach over the years, has been for many, many moons, Big C. Is this the time that Donovan Mitchell can say, not so fast, my friend, there's a great shooter in town, and his name is Donovan Mitchell. What does he have to gain by shining and outshining the great James Harden? Big C, your thoughts?
You know, he's not going to outshine James Harden. You know, you put that on the back burner. James Harden is going to get his. Donovan Mitchell has been solid and consistent. And so it's about what Porter can do for these Utah Jazz. They need to get Michael Porter to get some points up, Charlton. Inglis is going to have a big game. They need him. That's the counterpoint right there when you talk about Utah. What does Ingles do in a broadcast? Because you got a 6'10" swing man, Charlton, with long arms that is hard to cover and it can knock down the three.
Yeah, long arms can knock down the three. It's a shooter's delight. Can you imagine the game of the night in the NBA with all the NBA major cities and people wanting to the big marquee players, the East Coast, West Coast? Could you imagine the game of the night in the NBA being in the city of Salt Lake City, Utah? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's all about playing basketball. It's not about the city that you're in. It's about the performance that you put on the floor.
Yeah.
And if you just happen to be the best team in a small city, I mean, Milwaukee's been a small city for a long time, and every time Giannis was on the court the past couple of years, it was must-see basketball.
Yeah.
That's the way that the NBA has swung. It's not all about being in a city of lights, Charlton. It's being in a city where you can light it up.
Yeah, well, you can light it up. Can't wait to see that game. It's on my DVR. And speaking of swinging, Big C, hit deep, right field, back to the wall, home run. So Major League Baseball, they finally, it's weird to say finally, they finally decide they're going to crack down on the use of foreign substances, Big C, on the balls. You can laugh if you want. No foreign substances on the balls in Major League Baseball. No spitting. No snot. You know how baseball pitchers don't put snot on the nose. You rub some snot on the fingers and put that on the ball. No chapstick, taking chapstick, rubbing that in the ball. No scratching and sniffing. A lot of baseball pitchers, they like to scratch and sniff, Big C. No rosin. I mean, they're going to try to take the fun out of baseball. Baseball's been known for cheating. We always know about what the White Sox did back in the day. But you got to have some shenanigans. If you make the game too clean, what fun is that for the teams that want to record games like Houston, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, baseball is all about history.
Yeah.
And its history is about cheating. Everybody has cheated in every era.
Yeah.
And if you think that you want to control that in baseball, get ready for some 4-hour games.
That's like telling the baseball players they can't have, I don't want to say too much because people are going through things, but yeah, baseball players, they've been known to do a lot of things, and cheating in baseball is not the only one. It's all fair and love and war. But I want to see, I remember, I told you my mom coached a Little League baseball team when I was a young boy. I like when guys try to get an advantage. I like when guys would pick up some dirt and rub it on the ball or rub it on the bat, maybe to make the ball a little bit more slippery. There were guys that would have some type of substance below their jock strap. And you wonder, why are baseball pitchers always grabbing at their junk, Big C? Sometimes that's where they have the stuff. It's hidden in their junk, and then they put it on the ball, makes it harder to hit, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, baseball is a game of decisiveness.
Yeah.
And you have to decide whether you're going to be straight or you're going to decide that you're going to cheat.
Yeah.
Ever since I've watched baseball, Charlton, people have cheated to get an advantage in some way or another.
Yeah.
The baseball can always be doctored up. There's not much you can do to control that unless you're sitting there with a microscope watching that pitcher all game long.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you try to infringe on what baseball is, the unwritten rules, Charlton, then you got to sit up and expect 4-hour baseball games.
Yeah.
And people have been complaining that the games are 3 hours is well too long.
Yep. They complain that it's too long. It's all fair and love and war. The Dodgers knew they had a player in Turner that had tested positive for COVID-19 in the second inning. And they didn't pull him out, I think, until after the 7th inning. And luckily, nothing turned out too bad. But they were doing what people might say, oh, we didn't know that he had tested positive. They were waiting for the facts to come through or whatever they thought of. But they did that, and it helped the Dodgers win the World Series. And also Tampa in that World Series, they had a pitcher that was unhittable, Big C, in the 7th. And they inexplicably pulled him out. I mean, for what reason? I don't know. But there's always been some shenanigans in the world of baseball. And that, to me, makes baseball exciting. You want to see if your guys are going to get screwed at the home plate, if that makes sense at all, fair level war. So hopefully everybody can decide if they want to see a clean game or if they just like some of the history and tradition of baseball to stay the same. I like the history and tradition of Major League Baseball. March Madness, NCAA, the women are doing their thing. Pac-12 men and women, they're representing the West Coast very well. Looking forward to a lot of ladies and men given the chance to cut down the next Big C. NBA basketball is fantastic. We should see some great NBA basketball tonight. And always those shiny moments. I'm looking forward to what's going to happen at the trade deadline with the NBA coming up tomorrow. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble, with all you've got to use. How can you lose, Big C? What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm going to use your line. There's no excuse. There's no excuse in the NBA when you get your butt whooped and you lose a game. You lose to a better opponent, Charlton. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They're not worried about who's on the line, Charlton. They do the best job they can every time they're out there.
They do it every single time they're out there, Big C, and we are all the better for it as a country. You can be better, too. Every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.